Hi there, this is Prague Talk, a podcast from Radio Prague International. My name is Ian Willoughby. My guest this time out is TV journalist Darja Stomatová, who's been reporting from Ukraine since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion. Last week, Darja, who is 34, received the Ferdinand Peroutka Prize, perhaps the most prestigious honour in Czech journalism, for her coverage of the conflict. And I spoke to Darja Stomatová for this edition of Prague Talk. Darja, you're originally from Kazakhstan. You moved here at the age of about 5, I think, in the second half of the 1990s. What do you remember about first living here in Czechia?
I was quite lost, maybe. When we came here, I remember there's one memory very bright in my mind when I was put in the kindergarten. It was my first day, and the kids around me, they just put me on the chair, and they were yelling at me different Czech words, so they hoped that I will remember something at least, and I was just probably very lost.
And you were exotic for them, I guess.
I think so, yeah, because in these times there were not that much children from abroad. I had one classmate on the elementary school that was from Ukraine, I think, but there was no more. So probably it was not that, common for kids to have someone from different country. Of course, right now it changed a lot, and you have many kids from Ukraine, from different countries in the classes.
What were your beginnings in journalism, and why was TV journalism the direction you went into?
Because I like the combination of the sound, of the information, and of the video. I think it makes quite like complete image of the situation, and it was probably one of the reasons why I started to do television. Of course, also I always wanted to do the foreign news reporting, because then you can travel around, you can meet people that you would never meet, you can talk about their culture, their situation. But I have never thought that I will do the war journalism.
And how did you end up reporting from Ukraine, which now you're obviously most known for?
Because my life was put together with the person, with Jan Scherger, who before he did also the war reporting. So when we were trying to figure out who will go to Ukraine, this role was made for me because I speak Russian.
And sorry, he's your partner?
He's my partner, yes. So we decided to go together, and we came to Ukraine a week before the start of the invasion. By that time, I did not believe that it will end up like that. But it ended up like that, and then I just couldn't stop it, It just started, and we traveled to Ukraine and back and again and again and again. And then the part of Ukraine was just becoming the part of me.
Originally, you were reporting for Prima CNN. Now you're with Czech television. You must have seen a lot of things, and you must have spoken to people who've seen much more things. What are some of the strongest stories you've come across in Ukraine?
Every story that we create or we report about is strong story, because there's war, and these stories are very different. Sometimes it's the story of sadness. Sometimes it's the stories about heroes. Sometimes it's something very critical to Ukraine, about corruption, about other stuff that are not okay for democratic society. So these stories are very different. There's a lot of strong stories. If I can remember of one of these stories, probably for me, it's the story of the father who was searching for his son because he was lost for a month. He was a soldier, and then he found him. He went to the Western Ukraine, took medicine, and he was in the hospital. And by the time that he was okay, he decided to go back to the war zone, and he died. It's probably the strongest story because it's the essence of the war, that people lost their relatives in the war, that fathers and mothers have to send their sons to war. I think it's, for me, probably it's the essence of what we do.
And you made a documentary about this story.
Yes, we did.
What have been some of the hardest assignments you've had or hardest reporting jobs you've had so far?
It's very hard to report about critical stuff in Ukraine because at one point you have to realize that it might cause some harm, it might give some information to Russian side. So it was very hard to actually understand when to put the story out, how, do this story, who to contact. It took us a lot of thinking about how to provide this story before we actually, put it.
And can you give me an example of what kind of topics you're speaking about?
We did a story about fortifications in Ukraine that was not okay on the war zone. And we started to ask, why is it like that? Is there money? Is something, getting money from this? Or is it the principle, the basic of the plan of this fortification?
So there's a certain risk for you feel, if you're reporting about corruption in Ukraine?
It was not about reporting about corruption. It was more that we were making report from the zone. If we will put this story too early, then the Russian side would know where these fortifications are. So we had to wait for about a year when the situation changed and Russians were already on these places. So we knew that they already know about it. And in case that we will show the story, that we will not harm anybody, we will not show something that we're not supposed to show.
Describe your work on the ground. For example, how do you stay on top of everything that's happening? Are you in constant touch with the Ukrainian authorities? What are your other sources?
I think the most important sources are the people that we talk about. We have a lot of people that we know in Ukraine, contacts, and we are constantly in touch with the soldiers, with the civilians. And this is probably the most basic source for me. And then I'll just pick the pieces of the information and try to compare it with the official information, of information from the social media and stuff like that, or different Ukrainian media. And then I put it all together. When
have you felt personally most afraid in all of your time in Ukraine, which is now almost 4 years?
When I was probably in Konstantinivka, it's the front village. And we went there by foot, not by car, because we thought that it's more safe. And the realization that you're in the middle of the city and you have no escape room from this village, that was probably, it's quite hard to understand this situation on the place. You have to work, but you also understand that there's no easy way how to get out from that.
What does it do to you having experiences like this? Were you waking up like a week later in the middle of the night going, how does that affect you?
Sometimes I think about some stuff that happened in Ukraine, but it's not mostly in Ukraine, but it's mostly when we are here back in Czech Republic. We know that we are safe. And then I remember some stories, some contacts. There's a lot of people that I cannot get in touch because their phone is not working. And then, you think about these stories. You think about these people. What happened to them? Are they alive? Are they dead? Did they decide to stay in these front cities, or they decided to leave? And this thinking is probably the more devastating for me than the realization that I saw dead bodies, dead soldiers, dead civilians. Because at that point, you just know that you cannot help them, and you know that there's no future for them. But other people that we were doing our stories with, that they had some future. And it's just up to their decision.
How does it work in terms of how long are you sent for in one go, so to speak? How long does Czech TV send you there for? How often are you sent home, or how often do you come home?
For the last 2 years, we have rotations. So for 1 month we are in Ukraine, and the other month we are in Czech Republic.
And you mentioned people on the front line or close to the front line. Do you find that even in the most hellish of situations, that people still don't want to leave their homes?
Yes, I find it completely terrible because I just cannot understand why they are staying there. There's a lot of examples when the volunteers, the people who help to evacuate from these cities, they came because they were asked by them, by these people who stay in these villages. And at one point, these people just say, I don't want to leave my home. Just leave me here, go back, be safe. But they don't realize that these people, these volunteers, risk their life for them, for coming to these cities. This is horrible.
What do you think it has done to you, the 4 years of covering Ukraine? How have you changed?
A lot of things changed. For me, maybe it's about realization that it's not natural always to have your safe space. And we have to realize that at one point, everything can change as it changed for people in Ukraine. And I feel like it's precious for me to have my calm times, at home, to be with my family. And you just realize it more, that it's not just natural. It doesn't supposed to be natural. And you have to take care about these moments.
I have to admit, I'm the kind of guy, if I see danger, I go exactly in the opposite direction because I don't want to be anywhere near danger. Does it take a certain kind of person, or what kind of person does it take to be a war reporter?
You probably don't think, you just do. You have no choice. You have no other choice to do it differently, and you just continue.
But you do have another choice. You could say to Czech TV, I'm tired of it. I don't want to do it anymore. I started to, feel more scared. You do have a choice.
Probably yes, but what about these people that I stay in contact in Ukraine? How can I tell them that I will not come again? How can I tell them that I give up when they did not give up? I cannot give up like that. Maybe it's about this more.
And how do your family and your friends here in Czechia view the work that you do?
It's very hard for them. For my family, for Jan's family, it's very hard for them to see that we are in places that are very dangerous, that we are risking our lives. But we have their support probably and some kind of understanding. Of course, every time when I came back, my mom is saying, maybe it's your last trip, maybe you don't have to go anymore. You just decide to stay in Czech Republic, change the work, do something different. But then I realized that I cannot just stop. And it's not about work. It's not work. It's just some kind of, your mission to finish this, to be there till the end of the war, to cover these stories, to stay in touch with these people. There's also a huge feeling of responsibility for people here in Czech Republic, that they want, see these stories that we do. There's a lot of things around this.
When you say the end of the war, what's your educated guess as to how the war may end?
I have no idea, honestly. I have no idea. I hope that it might end by 2 years. That it will not take longer time, because both sides are very, very tired. Economically, the people are tired. So probably it will not last more than 2 years. I hope so.
What do you think might happen in 2 years then? What would be the outcome?
It will depend at what position will stay Russia and Ukraine, because right now it's more about doing it till the end, what I see from the Russian side and from the Ukrainian side. They don't want to give up, which is good for Ukraine, but also Russians don't want to give up. It will depend on at what point they will find themselves. If it will be that bad that they will have to realize that there are some stuff that they have to give up. I hope so that it will not happen, but it might happen. So it depends on that probably.
Getting back to your work, are there any advantages or disadvantages to being a female reporter in this kind of environment?
I believe there are more advantages than disadvantages, because I believe that in war, women, they're not supposed to be in war. It's more like a man's thing. When they are kids, they play like soldiers, they play with the fake guns. This stuff is more common for men. But as a woman, I'm more like this element of home, element of this nice feeling that someone on the Western Ukraine or in Czech Republic is waiting for them. And for example, soldiers are very nice to me. Civilian people, I think, are more open with me than with Jan, if I can compare. And it gives a lot of advantages.
Is it an advantage being a native speaker of Russian?
Yes, of course. It is a huge advantage. Some Ukrainian people, they don't like to hear Russian words. But when I explain to them that I'm from Kazakhstan and I live in Czech Republic, they changed. And they are not that, dramatic about me speaking Russian.
What was your knowledge of Ukrainian people, let's say 5 years ago, and how do you view them now? Because to me, they are absolute heroes.
They are heroes. I would agree with that. I think they did what I cannot imagine that they would do. Russia is a huge country. It was a huge power. It was huge pressure. But they did it. I think they're like already they are the winners of this war compared to Russia.
How do you feel then when you come back from Ukraine to Czechia and you see around you this pro-Russian sentiment, political parties even who seeming to be repeating Russian narrative, so-called? How does that make you feel?
It's a pity, but for me, it's just about doing my job in Ukraine. There's also a lot of commentaries, when I put something on social media, some people don't write nice stuff, but then I think about it and I realize that I go to war. I risk my life and I don't feel the power to change their mind of these people. I do my job as perfectly as I can in this situation, but it's not on me, making them change their mind.
Oh, you can't change these people's minds. I don't believe that myself. But still, I'm still interested in what you think of them, especially this country was invaded by the Russians in 1968. How can so many Czechs be pro-Russian?
The war is already, for 4 years. I believe that these people just think about themselves more than about the future, probably. They don't realize that if Ukraine would not stop Russia, it might end up differently. I think they don't realize it right now. They just think about how, the inflation is working, that they have to pay more money for food, for electricity. And it's just their, way of living and way of understanding the situation. I think maybe it would be, better for them to get more information, to find different sources. But I also understand how easy it is to just, give up and just do the disinformation agenda because it's just easy. It's very easy.
You have this prize which looks like a crystal ball, but it isn't a crystal ball. I know you haven't got a crystal ball, but can you imagine that Russia in future decades would try and take more territory to the west of its own borders and would take action against, for example, members of NATO?
In past years, Russia showed the intention, to make enemy outside of the country. I believe that this is the way how to put Russia together. I believe that this is kind of a policy of Russia, of Kreml, of Vladimir Putin, and it might be possible that they will try to do again something like that, just because they want to save Russia. If the government will not change and if they will not feel that they lost this war. So I think they will not feel that.
To end on a happier note, you have with you, as I just said, your prize, the Ferdinand Peroutka Prize for Journalism. And for you to get this award at your age is really a great achievement. What does it mean for you to win this award?
I feel like my stories are seen, I feel like people, other journalists, they see me, they see our work, and I'm very grateful for that. Because it's quite hard to realize that actually, because you just do your stories and you put it online and you put it on television, but the feedback is not all the time. And by this prize, I just feel this is kind of a feedback for my work, that we probably do it somehow good, in a good way, and we need to continue. But it's also a huge responsibility to not fall, to not stop, to just continue to do my work as I did it before.
Many thanks indeed to Darja Stomatová, and congratulations once again to her for receiving the Ferdinand Peroutka Prize. Prague Talk is a podcast from Radio Prague International, and if you're new to the pod and enjoyed my discussion with Darja, why not look up some of the earlier episodes in the series and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. But that's all for now from me, Ian Willoughby. Thank you so much indeed for listening to Prague Talk, and talk to you again very soon.